You want me to tell them what happened? Well, 2 people got cramps and they're spreading. We were all very hyper about it. And I have to go shower some people.
Executive producers President Barack Obama and Michelle Obama.
I wanted to be part of the world, but I didn't see anyone like me in it. I hear about a summer camp for the handicapped run by hippies. Somebody said you probably will smoke dope with the counselors, and I'm like, sign me up.
Disabled campers play guitar and sing.
Come to Camp Jeanette and find yourself.
There I was in Woodstock.
Campers dance and play baseball.
You wouldn't be picked to be on the team back home, but at Jeanette, you had to go up to bat.
Even when we were that young, we helped empower each other. It was allowing us to recognize that the status quo is not what it needed to be.
Sundance Film Fest winner.
The world always wants us dead. We live with that reality.
At the time, so many kids just like me were being sent to institutions. It was just a continual struggle.
Most disabled people, like myself, are unable to use public transportation.
We needed a civil rights law of our own.
A Netflix original documentary.
A rehabilitation program has been vetoed by the president because it was cost prohibitive.
We decided we were going to have a demonstration.
You get the call to action, to the barricades.
Disabled
A
protesters.
small army of the handicapped have occupied this building for the past 11 days.
So many people from Camp Jeanette found their way into the building.
The deaf use sign language.
The FBI cut off the phones. The deaf people went, we know what to do. That's how we communicated to the people outside the building. The Black Panther Party would bring a hot meal. We were like this.
We are the strongest political force in this country.
Addressing congressmen.
We will no longer allow the government to oppress disabled individuals. And I would appreciate it if you would stop shaking your head in agreement when I don't think you understand what we are talking about.
Sit-in participants parade triumphantly.
What we saw at that camp was that our lives could be better.
A child rides his father's wheelchair. Protesters crawl up Capitol steps.
If you don't demand what you believe in for yourself, you're not going to get it.
CRIP Camp, a disability revolution.
Do you like to see handicapped people depicted as people?
Excuse me?
In select theaters and on Netflix March 25th. Rated R.
Oh, wow. I get goosebumps every time I see that trailer. It's such a powerful, moving, and impactful and entertaining on top of it all. Welcome, everyone. I'm Joni Cooper, the Director of Programming for DocLands Documentary Film Festival. Thanks all for tuning in tonight. And a big thank you to Netflix for helping us put this all together and for becoming a DocPitch sponsor this year. We're absolutely thrilled. We're chatting tonight with the co-directors of CRIP Camp, Nicole Newnham and Jim LeBrecht. And I do say we're chatting because I hope you'll all I hope you'll all use the Q&A function on the right-hand side of your window there. I'll be sort of looking at the questions throughout the conversation. So if you've got something you'd like to get in, I'll try to get to it. Nicole is Oakland-based, an Emmy-winning and 5-time Emmy nominee documentary producer and director. She's recently produced 2 virtual reality films and won a 2017 Emmy for Outstanding New Approaches to Documentary for the VR film Collisions. I'd sure like to talk to Nicole about VR sometime. And along with producing and directing numerous other films, Nicole co-produced and directed The Rape of Europa that was shortlisted for an Academy Award. Jim is also Bay Area based, and he has worked over 35 years as a film and theater sound designer and mixer, author and disability rights activist. He's got over 145 film credits to his name and co-authored Sound and Music for the Theater, The Art and Technique of Design, which is in its 4th edition and uses a textbook all over the world. Jim's also currently a board member of the Disability Education and Defense Fund, which works for the rights of the disabled through education, legislation, and litigation. What a team. Thanks so much for making the time to come in during these strange and strangely busy times. I honestly can't keep track of all you guys seem to be doing, and that's only the public stuff. So thanks so much.
I'm really glad to be here.
Wonderful. And I think a lot of you out there know that in 2018, CRIP Camp was shortlisted to be pitched at DocLands Documentary Film Festival's pitching forum, DocPitch, and won the Audience Choice Award of $25,000. Are there any highlights of that experience that you'd like to share with us, either of you?
Yeah, you know, that was the first time we had shown footage, you know, like any kind of cut footage. We showed a trailer that we had cut together. And this was the first time we had shown it to any audience. And first of all, the environment was so friendly and warm, and we felt like everyone was rooting for every film that was pitching. But it was an electric experience for us because we could tell from the moment the lights went down and the footage came on that people were with it. And, you know, for a film, when you're making a documentary, there's always this sort of question in your mind. You're like, I'm connecting to the material. I think it's amazing. I think this story has power, but you just don't know if an audience will feel it. And we felt it so strongly that day. So I'll always remember that. I just felt this huge feeling of joy, like filling my entire body, because I thought, oh, we really have something here. It was wonderful.
Fantastic.
I remember the two of us huddled to the side of the screen together, and we were like close to each other. It's like, oh my God, they're laughing. Yeah, I will never forget that either.
Well, and what I love about DocPitch too is that amazing camaraderie amongst all the filmmakers. I love how supportive they are of each other and really genuinely cheer each other on. Like it actually doesn't seem like it matters who wins because everybody is behind everybody else.
Yeah, it did feel like that, and we were motivated to kind of share the love of the award actually with another team, and we still feel kind of a sense of being colleagues, you know, with the other people that were pitching that day.
Yeah, that stood out for me, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, because you know how difficult it is to raise funds for a documentary film, and you guys. They shared their cash award with another team, which was absolutely amazing and so touching. So it just capped that whole experience off. It was so great. I
gotten to know LaFleur and Lauren through the UC Berkeley grad journalism school and Berkeley Sound Artists, which I had founded. We've been doing mixing for all the grad student films for years. And I knew what they went through to try to make this documentary about Standing Rock. And literally some horrendous things were happening to them as journalists. So it felt really, really wonderful to have this ability to say, you know, let's share the wealth and let's be supportive of each other.
That was so cool. I don't know if you two know this, but this year, during such challenging times for filmmakers, all of us, but for filmmakers especially, through our incredibly generous DocPitch sponsors and supporters, we've been able to up the ante for DocPitch this year. We're not only awarding $25,000 for the Audience Choice Prize, but we've put together an industry jury that will award $100,000 in additional filmmaker grants among 8 pitching teams. Can you believe?
That's wonderful.
It's so great.
We're so thrilled to be able to help the filmmakers with these grants. And especially right now, nobody is going to go home with empty pockets.
Wow, incredible. So good.
Pretty cool.
This is really indicative of, I think, CFI and how you've always been through DocLands and through the Mill Valley Festival, always been so supportive of filmmakers, and that although it kind of feels like our hometown festivals, you folks have been just like world class in the films that you bring in and the community that you cultivate and create. And it's always been a great festival to come to.
Thanks. Yeah, we kind of like it. And DocLands being the little sister festival, we've got a lot to aspire to. Now, so DocPitch 2018, you said that was the first time you had actually put a trailer together. So that was that early in the development process? Like early in your working team?
We'd had that trailer for a while, and we had and we did make it early on. I mean, I think we'd probably been talking and developing the project for about, what do you think, Jim, about a year before we cut that trailer, maybe? We had to find the core footage of Camp Jened, the People's Video Theater footage that was in the film, and that took months. We were just having creative conversations amongst ourselves and kind of writing drafts of treatments and trying to figure out the arc of the story. We were contacting other campers, trying to put the pieces together. And then eventually we got some funding from Catapult to cut a trailer together for fundraising. And then we got Andy Gersh on board to work with us to cut that trailer. And we had been showing it around privately prior to the pitch, but that was the first time we had shown it to an audience, of any size, anything other than like a person or two on our laptop.
Yeah. Well, is this the first film you two worked together on?
Well, as directors and producers, yes.
Yeah.
But I've really Nicole and I, we've known each other now for about 20 years. I was sound mixer, sound designer on 3 of her previous feature-length documentaries.
Okay.
So that really kind of led us to a very wonderful lunch one day where Nicole had just been wrapping up Visionary Optimist. And we just kind of talked about what both of us were kind of up to. And I was kind of eager to try to interest her in doing a film around disability. And I had brought up a few different topics to her, but kind of sheepishly and almost offhandedly said, I'd have always wanted to see a documentary about my summer camp. I think there's an important story there.
I was curious. I was totally curious, but I was also a little bit afraid because, a lot of people have this like deep, profound connection to their summer camp, and not everyone's summer camp needs to be a, feature-length documentary. But Jim started telling me about Camp Jened, and it was just like, it was that kind of thing where somebody tells you something and you realize just hearing him talk about it was changing so many misconceptions and preconceptions that I had, both about disability culture and people with disabilities and what it's like to be a teenager with a disability, but also just our own history, And then the thing that was super exciting to me was Jim's theory that there was something about this profound experience of liberation that young people had at Camp Jened that could be connected to the movement that came later. And that was something we started kind of unpacking and digging into and almost kind of, testing and researching as we started working on the film. And the more it became clear that there was this strong line in many people's memory or many people's own personal stories about that, and that the film could kind of, pull back and show that in a way that had never really been told or shown. It was just like very, very exciting. Plus, they had this Facebook page where all the campers over years had been, throwing their camp pictures up on Facebook. And even before we found the footage, just looking at the pictures, it was like, oh my God, it was like falling down a rabbit hole and being in Wonderland. It just looked like such a fun, magical, joyous place to be, and a place unlike any I'd certainly ever, known of or been exposed to.
And the fact that Judy Heumann was at camp and what she has done through the government and all sorts of organizations, she's a rock star.
She was kind of born that way. That's my theory. That's just the way she's been. That's the way she was raised. She'll tell you that a lot of it comes from the fact that she's from Brooklyn. But, what you see in the film really was what I first experienced at Camp Jened when I first met her.
That's so great. We've got a question from Delbert Witter. He wants to know if you can tell us about your process in selecting the songs for the film.
Hi, Delbert. You know, as everything in our film, this is really a collaboration. It was a good collaboration. I had some ideas about music. Nicole had a couple of really she brought in some really critical pieces of music into it that I had, you know, and our editors too. So no, it was a great experience. And you know, at one point in the process, we actually had a lot of music that people that we were showing it to were kind of saying, it's starting to sound like a jukebox. And that, you know, we wanted to kind of pull it back. And of course, it was the right thing to do.
Yeah. Delbert also said, given your impressive background in sound design and mixing, you must have had a very strong opinion, but it sounds like it was the democratic process.
Yeah. I mean, it has. I mean, we could just spend an hour talking about our process and working together.
Yeah.
And truly, this is the greatest collaboration I've ever experienced, and it really was based on hearing each other and always being open, and so, you know, of course, I mean, I lived at the time. I knew the music I was hearing at the time, but also we're not doing it for me. We're doing it for an audience.
Yeah.
Well, I think all filmmakers, I mean, at least for me, like, music has always been one of the most important things about a film, and something I start thinking about the minute I start thinking about a story, you know? So there were things that, you know, I started immediately listening to music, and so did Jim, and we would get together and just, you know, throw song titles back and forth and listen to things and send each other links to things. And, you know, so one of the first things that I brought in was Freedom, and that became by Richie Havens from Woodstock, and that became kind of like, we asked our editor to cut sort of a montage to that, and he did, and that just felt completely right, you know. And like, the thing about music that's so great, one of the thing that is so fun about it is that you can think of a great song and it totally won't work, and you can think of a great song and it totally will work, and you don't really know. So our editors were suggesting songs, and we had a really great music supervisor named Amine Raymer, and she brought some fantastic things to the table, like that "Like a Ship" song that we used during the film and also in the end credits, which is maybe my favorite piece of music in the whole film now. And I had never heard that before, but, you know, I just almost fell off my chair when I heard it for the first time. So I love that magic, you know. I mean, like the Neil Young song, Sugar Mountain, at the very end, like I was cooking dinner one night and thinking about the film, and that song just came on the radio, and it's all that kind of magic and kismet and collaboration, you know, that makes it all come together, I think.
Yeah, a lot of synchronicity with when music just kind of falls into your lap at the right time.
Yeah.
You know, being in Northern California, and there's like a lot of deadheads around, you know, we'd originally tried using the Grateful Dead song "Box of Rain" in the opening, and it was close, but didn't make it. And in fact, the one Grateful Dead song that's in there is "Trucking," which is kind of grown up. It was never my favorite Grateful Dead song, but it just, you know, it just fit the moment just right.
Yeah.
I still miss "Box of Rain" though. It was really nice.
It was close.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Bill Brummel says Crimp Camp is the best film of the year thus far, not the best documentary, the best movie.
Checks in the mail, Bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to say that, you know, I've been involved with a certain amount of advocacy in the documentary community specifically, and an outgrowth of a really great time 2 years ago at the International Documentary Association's Getting Real conference was this convening of a bunch of just filmmakers with disabilities working in the documentary space. Both Delbert and Bill are people that I met, and we started an organization called Forward Doc, which is Filmmakers with Disabilities -Doc, and we've got almost 100 members now.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. I had to put the plug in.
Yes, I actually had a note to talk about that because I came across that newish organization. So thank you. So at that point, like after DocPitch, you pretty much, it was pretty quickly, well, not long after that, that you premiered at Sundance, right? Was that your world premiere?
Well, it was about a year and a half later, I think, that we were.
Oh, yes, it wasn't that year, right? It was a whirlwind for me.
Yeah.
For you.
Yeah, that was the beginning of our journey, and Sundance was the end of it, at least of cutting. You know, we finished the film, I think we picture locked it right before Christmas, and then, you know, did all of our finishing to try to get ready for the Sundance premiere. But I mean, that was another just incredible thing, just finding out that we were going to be the opening night film at Sundance and be in this enormous theater. And Sundance was incredible to work with, and we're willing to take out, just rip seats out of the theater so that our entire entourage of wheelchair users and other audience members and press in wheelchairs could come into the screening. And you know, it was an historic, incredible night where we felt like, you know, I don't know, it just felt like something shifted culturally, something changed when all those people who had been leaders in the movement and campers and counselors at Camp Jeanette, you know, our whole troupe, I think we had like 20 people out on the stage, and just standing ovation after standing ovation. And yeah, sort of wonder. And then, you know, shortly thereafter, we were able to go to a couple more really great festivals, but shortly thereafter, we weren't able to screen in theaters anymore at all. So it's kind of interesting to think about the bookends of, you know, being with you guys, and then where we ended up there that night at Sundance.
Yeah. So people are curious, and I am too. After Sundance, did Michelle and Barack Obama come in pretty soon after that? I don't remember.
They came in early on, actually, when we were still trying to finance and finish the financing and finish the film. We had been selected to go to the Sundance Edit Lab, and we had a really incredible experience there. And we sort of had a very, very early rough cut, I would say, more like an assembly. And we started having conversations with Netflix, and then our fantastic executive producer, Howard Gertler, read about the Obamas starting Higher Ground, although I don't think at that point it had a name, but he read that they were forming a partnership with Netflix, and he said, we have to figure out how to get this project in front of them because it really shares so many values with them, you know, the grassroots organizing and young people being able to change the world. And also Judy Heumann had worked in the Obama administration in the State Department. So that same trailer, we got in front of Priya Swaminathan, who had been hired, you know, to run Higher Ground, and eventually Tonya Davis, her partner. And they showed it to the Obamas, and they called us and said, we just haven't been able to stop thinking about that. Can we come and talk to you? And then they loved the project, and they said, we really want to roll our sleeves up and make this film with you. And they did. The Obamas actually reviewed several cuts of the film and gave feedback, and it was an incredible process.
So when did you have lunch with them?
Not yet. I'm sure the pandemic must have gotten in the way of that. But we got a wonderful call from the president the morning of our premiere at Sundance.
Oh.
And you know, it was just lovely to kind of hear him congratulate us and, you know, give us just some advice, just saying, hey, you know, you may hear a lot of chatter or negative chatter, and don't worry about it, because someday down the road, someone's going to come up to you and say, I saw your film. It really had a big impact on my life. And I don't think we were all kind of, tearing up. It was really remarkable.
Yeah.
And, just to know that they actually looked at some of the cuts. And Nicole says to me someday, Jim, President Obama and Mrs. Obama, they know your name now. And I was like, it was just like, oh my God. And, and they, along with the folks at Higher Ground, really, they gave us some notes and really did roll up their sleeves.
Very nice. Nancy Kelly says, love a CRIP Camp. Was in the audience at your DocPitch. Unforgettable, joyous. And she asked, did you meet the Obamas? So thanks for answering. Noelle said she was overwhelmed by the support of the Black Panther Party and their participation without notoriety. Any comments on that?
We were too. we were too when we started reading about it, and when we saw that there was footage of it and photographs of it, and that we could actually bring that to life. And to us, it felt like that moment was sort of a core of a theme that was really important to us throughout the documentary, which is the solidarity that comes from community, and also the kind of really powerful solidarity that exists within the disability community, and the intersections between the disability rights movement or disability justice movement and other social justice movements, and being both from the Bay Area, I think we felt like there was something very unique to the history and time of that moment in history in the Bay Area when movements were overlapping and working together. And we would see like Steve Hoffman, one of the characters in the film, when we were looking at footage, we'd be looking at footage of old pride marches from the same year as that sit-in, and we'd be like, oh, there's Steve in the Pride March. And then we'd see a bunch of folks that were from the Butterfly Brigade, which was also in that same march, coming in and smuggling walkie-talkies into the building, to try to help. And so with the Panthers in particular, I mean, really that sit-in would not have succeeded without them bringing in 3 meals a day. And that simple fact, and we knew that if we, told the story right, audiences would be thinking that to themselves. And then, I think it just proves the power of that. And it also dispels myths about the Black Panthers, I think, given that the film is reaching, a wide audience, and we felt that was really important as well.
Yeah. Stephanie Welch says, congratulations on your wonderful film, and commented that she absolutely loves how you wove the archival material and interviews so seamlessly. And another point about a question about the archival footage from Terry Kundal. For Jim, what was the biggest surprise for you in reviewing the archival footage?
The biggest surprise is that we actually found it. I had this memory of these group of hippies with video cameras showing up at camp, and I had remembered that they had actually strapped the tape deck to the handlebars of my wheelchair and gave me a camera one day, and somebody pushed me around camp, and I did a tour, and it was really through all I could remember was that the name People was in the title of this group. And Nicole, I think you spent like 3 or 4 months trying to dig up a connection, which you finally did. I mean, that's a story unto itself. I would say that being able to look back at 5.5 hours worth of this footage was very bittersweet.
Wow.
And, and I certainly didn't remember, I hardly remembered any of this. To see that kind of pinnacle of the camp section of this message to parents, this talking about it, it was was really surprising.
Yeah, that's amazing. Another little bit of synchronicity that you just never know what you're going to come up with when you start a project like this, like anything. Wow. So yes, we'll get there. So yeah, thanks, Jim, for like opening your heart to us and completing this film that is an incredibly personal story. And you were so cute. Gosh, you still are. You still are. But it's also just historically important and a real transformative film. It's amazing.
I just really kind of want to give credit to the collaboration that Nicole and I built over time, and the level of trust, and that I certainly felt like I felt safe in really being able to kind of open up very personal things about me and my body and my experience, and that without that feeling that I was really working in a safe space. I directed a film before. I've been at Soundmix, and that made such a huge difference. And I think it's our friendship and anyway, that made it possible.
Yeah. Nicole, did you have to really convince Jim to go that way, or did he see the real value in it early on?
I mean, Jim, you can tell me if you agree with this, but I would say that you saw the value in it from the beginning. I mean, I think Jim, saw the value in the whole. Well, actually, interestingly, when Jim first pitched me the story, he said maybe I could co-produce it with you and you can direct it. And then I came back after thinking about it and thinking about how incredible it was and said, I really think we should co-direct it together, because to me, the thing that was really exciting was, oh my God, like here's Jim, who's been working in the film industry for 25 years, I think at that point, or 30, and had knows everybody in the documentary community, was very poised, to make a film. And here's his story. Here's his, and he's the one who picked up the camera and started shooting it at that camp, 50 years ago. So I think that Jim also saw the value of that, because he'd been working already as an advocate for years, kind of arguing for better access for filmmakers with disabilities in our industry, and really wanting to see better representation. So, but I think that being said, it's still a really hard thing to do. It's a really hard thing to both, open yourself up emotionally, but then also be able to step back and look at that analytically. And we wanted to tell a story that was not just, the life and times of Joni LeBrecht, as Jim says, but was like, like a movement story. And so we really wanted Jim to be a character that kind of guided us into the world and pulled us through it in this really intimate way, but in a way was kind of an everyman kind of character in some respects, at least, stacked up against Judy Heumann, and but who was sort of on equal footing with the other characters. And initially we tried having Jim as a not on camera presence, but just a narrator, so that it would feel a little bit more like a personal film. And that started to seem to fight, that kind of ensemble, kind of collectivist feeling that really seemed to fit with the time and the story. And so we then put Jim on camera, and that was a very powerful decision that was actually recommended by David Teague, who's an amazing consulting editor that we worked with, because then it really was what we had kind of also been trying to do, which is to create kind of a feeling of a community kind of share, like telling its history to itself, in a way, like sharing it with each other. And the inspiration for that was really The Times of Harvey Milk, which I think is a great example of a film that feels like that. You feel like you're listening to a community kind of share its story And then you feel like you're kind of on the inside. So we went so far as to have Jim actually speaking in his interview to Denise. So he was also, talking to a fellow friend from the community. And so I guess I would just say that it was an evolution of like us kind of working together and talking a lot, and Jim doing a lot of really like deep personal work around his own story that I was not involved in to get to the because working on the film would bring things up, and then we would have to discuss them. Or there'd be revelations that happened from listening to other people's stories or looking at things that were in the archival footage and all of that, So it's like this ongoing multi-layered process where Jim had to be both inside and outside. And I still don't honestly know how you did that. You did it very, very well, Like we kept calling him, with Andy Gersh, one of our editors, we called him, he called Jim like CJ and RJ for character Jim and real Jim. So he'd be like, now when CJ, is climbing up the stairs. But anyway, yeah, it was a really interesting process.
That's great. Stephanie wants to know if you'll be sharing any of the footage from the summer camp that didn't make it into the film, maybe on social media?
Netflix made a video that's I'm pretty sure is on their channel called On the Cutting Room Floor.
Oh.
And we chose 2 scenes that had not made it into the final cut. So there is some of that material there. Looking at a much closer look at Denise Jacobson's backstory and the story about me when I got my first car, and what that liberating experience was like, driving down the road and realizing I was out in the world, but nobody knew that I had a disability, or being able to go someplace, especially like the first snow of winter, just being something I could do myself. So there's a little bit of that material out there.
That's great.
I wanted to add real quick, if it's okay, that the People's Video Theater, who shot the footage, did this really great event with the Bay Area Video Coalition, which I think you can find online, where it's basically like an event like this, but about their work in general. So they show some footage from Camp Jened, which was in CRIP Camp, but they also show some of the other footage that they were filming at the time with the women's movement and all different kinds of groups around New York City in that era in the early 70s. And it's wonderful. So if you're interested in their footage, you might look that up.
Yeah. Now, almost immediately, was it pretty quick after the launch of your film, you and your impact team began a whole new journey with what I understand to be a wildly successful CRIP Camp official virtual experience? Or did that come, no, did you start that maybe more recently with COVID?
There's many things that we had started to work on. Certainly Nicole and I were very kind of focused on just getting the film finished and getting out the door. But we had been raising money for an impact campaign for a while. And when it came down to really kind of getting somebody to manage it, we wound up putting it in the hands of 2 extraordinary women who are very much involved and embedded in the disability justice movement. And it wound up being just remarkable. They one of those folks, no longer with us, Stacey Milburn, she and Andrea Levant really put together an extraordinary campaign that has resulted in a 16-week kind of virtual CRIP camp that we've been doing on Sundays. We have a fellowship that just launched that's been sponsored by Adobe to really kind of connect disabled people working in the industries and and in the arts with kind of other folks that could really benefit from that kind of mentoring, educational material, and even right at the top of the whole kind of COVID thing, we raised funds for an emergency relief fund for artists with disabilities who are going to be, really hard hit by this. And we did that in association with Color Change. So it has been kind of wild and woolly but really incredible. So much that we thought we'd be lucky if we got maybe 500 or 1,000 people to sign up for these virtual CRIP camps. We're now over 9,000 people.
Wow.
And we have people from throughout the world. And even if it's like happened in the middle of the night, people who register can, a few days later, download videos to watch these, these virtual camp things. And, it's just created more community, which is so remarkable. A totally unrelated to us Facebook page started called CRIP Camp 2020. And I don't know, Nicole's like 600 people we think are in that group. But again, it's like from throughout the world, and people introducing themselves and showing, posting photos and pride in community where they never had it before.
Well, I think this might be a great time to run that clip, if we might, the virtual CRIP Camp clip.
Welcome back, CRIP campers, and a huge hello to President Barack Obama.
Hello, everybody, and hello, Andrea. I was hoping to see if there were going to be any s'mores. I guess virtually that's hard to do. One of the first films that we were lucky enough to be able to produce was CRIP Camp.
Scenes from Camp Jeanette.
It was so moving to us to see all these young people, teenagers at Camp Jeanette who left camp believing they could lead a worldwide movement, finding their voice and awakening to their power.
Andrea Levant.
Bringing the CRIP Camp story to life means so much to our community.
What I want to do is hear from you about what camp's been like.
You have joined us on our 6th week of CRIP Camp.
Hi, everyone.
We're continuing the work you see in the film with leaders of today's movement.
Always like to start with a spirit of gratitude.
We have over 8,500 people registered to join us for camp each week from all over the world.
People using sign language.
Making sure everyone feels included is our priority. This includes folks who are deaf and hard of hearing.
Image description, okay.
And blind and low vision.
A dress with a black top.
I have heart-shaped glasses, short curly hair.
I'm wearing a denim shirt. There's a picture of me swimming in Hawaii, which is where I was born. My hair is much grayer than it was just a few years ago.
President Obama, I think that there's somebody that you wanted to bring in as well.
Somebody who has helped to make unbelievable change in this country and around the world, and who just happens to have been featured in CRIP Camp.
We want no more segregation.
How are you, Judy?
Judy Human.
Good, Mr. President. How are you?
How do you see the relationship between activism and protest and social movements and government?
We learned very early on that we needed to learn how laws were made, how they're implemented, how to work with our city government, our school boards. We would never have been successful if it wasn't for coalitions.
Historic footage.
From Section 504 has led to sweeping changes in transportation, healthcare, education, and job opportunities.
I can't imagine a more important story to tell. Our greatest progress has always come from the ground up.
Scenes of protest.
That's how the 504 sit-ins happened. That's how the ADA happened.
The passage of this monumental legislation will make it clear that our government will no longer allow the largest minority group in the United States to be denied equal opportunity.
I was proud to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the ADA at the White House 10 years ago. Now, as we celebrate the 30th anniversary, We have to remember the hard work and sacrifice it took to win those battles, so it gives us courage for the battles that remain.
1990 Capitol Crawl.
Right now, when we're in the middle of a pandemic, at a time when people around the country are waking up to the systemic racism that so often has excluded people, CRIP Camp with Film and the work that all of you are doing reminds us that when people get involved and they recognize their own power, they can achieve extraordinary change.
You can join the CRIP Camp virtual experience at cripcamp.com. Netflix.
Yes, and July 26 was the 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, the act that banned discrimination based on disability in employment, government services, and public accommodation. I tell you, my eyes leak every time I see Judy Human in there. She's amazing. Wow. So yeah, Peter Mendoza also made the comment that it's great that we're here talking about CRIP Camp and celebrating the anniversary of the ADA. So what was it like before the ADA, and has much changed since then?
Just a couple of things.
Yeah.
I neglected to describe what I look like at the top of all this, and I apologize for that. I'm a white guy who's 64 years old with a goatee and a blue and white patterned shirt, and I'm in my home office with a red wall behind me with a bunch of music posters. Look, the changes that started happening even after the passage of the HEW 504 regulations and their implementation were amazing, because any organization that got funding for the federal government could not discriminate against the disabled. So even in my final years at UC San Diego, I started seeing ramps go in. And I saw this at the Berkeley Repertory Theater. We're building a new theater that opened in the fall of 1980, and that theater had an elevator and a ramp that was very important to me because I traveled that way all the time. The ADA, certainly one should not ever think that it solved everything. It was an important landmark, but 30 years later, there's so much more work that needs to be done. I will tell you the protections now that I have that allow me to be a member of society in public accommodations like movie theaters and restaurants have made a huge difference. But I just need to point out that unemployment in the disabled community is still very, very high. Access on air travel is horrible. Wheelchairs get broken all the time. And if passengers are broken in the amount of occurrence that wheelchairs are being broken by the airlines, there would be a huge uproar. So, I mean, I could go on and on about this, but it's definitely a great world. But as Denise Jacobson says so wonderfully at the end of our film, to pass a law, but if society's attitude doesn't change, it's not worth that much. And I think that I know that our desire was that we could make a film that would reframe how the disabled and non-disabled people looked at disability.
Right. So what do you feel are the important things that need to be done now? The access to employment and better access to employment?
Look, we're heading into a very tough economic period, and whether, I think we've only begun to see it. And what tends to get cut are social service or, quote unquote entitlement programs. But these programs, especially in-home support services, make the difference between whether somebody has the money to live independently in their own home, which is actually mandated by law. And so we're going to be having to fight. There are attacks on the ADA all the time, and just even access to healthcare. And what we're seeing with COVID and the pandemic is that there have been protocols suggesting that if there's a scarcity of resources, that people with disabilities should be denied because of perceived lack of quality, or that even the ventilators that some people have, or their backup ventilators, could be confiscated. And this all comes down to how we perceive the value of one another, and especially people with disabilities.
Yeah, that's for sure. In terms of the new organization you started, Jim, Documentary Filmmakers with Disabilities, did you start that knowing how difficult it was? Like, for example, how did you get your start? Before you became a famous documentary film producer, you were also a hugely busy sound engineer, but how did you get there?
I mean, I actually found my way into audio through theater, and even starting out in high school, and what I did in college, and then got this break at the Berkeley Repertory Theater, and when I found out about the Saul Zaentz Film Center in Berkeley, I started to make contact with some sound supervisors and get them comps to go see shows at the Berkeley Rep that I had sound design, and just try to get myself known. So that was kind of my trajectory. And look, in my early 30s, I was an intern on a film, but that was fortunately, that was my way in. This organization, Forward Doc, was kind of, we've had kind of a founders group, which includes Daya Al-Muhammad, who is a low vision woman who's a documentary filmmaker, and Dryden, who's also has a disability, and an incredible ally, Alyssa Namias. And we've just been guiding this since the Getting Real conference 2 years ago, into making trying to formalize this. And we've kind of just had our kind of coming out, in which we've announced ourselves to the world, and we've already been involved looking at policies that people have been putting in place about how to safely film with COVID and the pandemic, and really looking at it through a disability lens. And if folks are interested in checking it out, there's a website which is at www.fwd-doc.org. So, I mean, it really just feeling like we needed to find some kind of a way to really advocate for ourselves and support each other. And
you're frozen. Are you still there? Yeah. Peter Mendoza actually commented on that. He said that CRIP Camp has really served as a vehicle to expand the conversation about disability between people with disabilities and people without disabilities. So I think that is also an important aspect of the film. It really has gotten the conversation going and has taught people without disabilities quite a lot, and I feel has really opened eyes to what the world is like and how it can be better.
I mean, when Nicole and I started really getting into the trenches, it was she that saw things that she could do as somebody working in the industry that I could not. And it was really a letter that she and I developed and sent to Carrie Putnam at Sundance that explained some of the real problems there are. And so Nicole, I think your perspective on all of this is pretty important. I mean, you kind of were looking at it from your vantage point as a very successful filmmaker and seeing all the barriers that there were.
Definitely. And I think, there was a power to the sort of, Jim's perspective and my perspective kind of joining together around what was important to try to communicate to the film, and trying to always keep these two audiences in mind, so that, like we've said, the film feels like it's an immersion in the perspective and the culture of disability, but it also feels welcoming, and it feels accessible to people who are coming in maybe to the first time. And ultimately, we wanted really to try to present disability culture for being as incredible as it is, and also show disability as just like one part of the human spectrum of existence. And the truth is that most people will experience disability in their lifetime. 1 in 4 people live with a significant disability. So we have been turning away for so long at so much of the like richness and amazingness of life. That sounds cheesy, but that's sort of how it felt. And we had people coming up to us at Sundance saying, you've broken down the barriers. Basically what they were saying is that we had succeeded in what Jim said he wanted the film to accomplish, which is, he said, I want people to feel like they can have a beer with us and have a conversation with us, and there's so much kind of fear and apprehension on the part of so many non-disabled people for no good reason. And we hope the film would show that. So there was that we had a lot of really fruitful conversations about that, and kept that in mind throughout the entire process of crafting the film. So it's really gratifying to be getting that kind of feedback back, that it is actually a conversation starter, and it is breaking down some barriers. And so many films now are being produced and made and discussed and pitched by other filmmakers with disabilities. And so it's so exciting to think about the expansion of that in the years ahead.
We've got one more question. How can we, from Peter, how can we advocate for CRIP Camp to get an Academy Award? Has anyone talked about nominating it?
We've seen a lot of buzz in the trade papers and websites, and so I from your lips to God's ear, that's all I can say.
We'll keep talking. So thanks. I've just got a little bit here to wrap up with, but thanks so much for being here and talking to us. As I mentioned earlier, we'll have a plethora of prizes to award filmmakers during DocPitch this year. It's going to launch on August 13th, and viewing the pitches and the project trailers and voting for the Audience Choice Award will all take place online, of course, from August 13th until the 19th. So watch our social channels and your inbox for details on how to take a look and vote for the Audience Choice Award. And we are also going to be presenting DocLands 2020 in tandem with the Mill Valley Film Festival, October 8th to 18th. So we'll be screening 2 films that were pitched at DocPitch last year. 5 Years North, the winner of the Audience Choice Prize, that was directed by Chris Temple and Zach Ingrassi, and Socialism, an American Story, directed by Bay Area filmmaker Yale Bridge, who also took home some funds that day. So we're looking forward to 2 more DocPitch winners. And please, everybody, keep on up with everything that's happening here at Rappel at Home. And again, thanks to you, Jim and Nicole, and to you, Pat. Thank you for all tuning in tonight, to everybody out there. And if you haven't already seen CRIP Camp, hope you take an opportunity to see it, and that your appetite is whetted for lots more documentaries, because we'll be bringing those to you through both Mill Valley and DocLands October 8th to 18th. All streaming, of course. So good night. Have a great night. Keep on watching docs.